Based on this main street alone, how many people would you assume live in this town? Would you say maybe 50,000? What about this place? Looks like a lot less, right? Well, would you believe me if I told you that these two towns have the same population? Why do these places differ so? Well, in short, suburban sprawl. Leander, Texas is a suburb of Austin that comprises of a plethora of new single-family developments and strip malls due to the spike of residential demand in the Austin metro area. The downtown area, which has been sorely neglected, is very similar to the situation in Killeen, Texas. However, unlike Leander, which has somewhat access to amenities due to being a suburb of Austin, Killeen is basically just a suburb in the middle of nowhere. Why does all of this matter? Why should we care? After all, with all of these perfectly manicured lawns and seemingly large houses, these living conditions could obviously be much worse. Yet, the road deaths in the US compared to other countries is shocking. In addition, carbon dioxide emissions for the US does not look good. Don't you think that as citizens of the first world, living conditions could also be much better? Unfortunately, in many suburbs, especially those built after World War II, renovating these areas to be more efficient is difficult to impossible due to the very design of these places. The post-war suburb is built to accommodate the automobile with absolutely no consideration to other forms of transportation, and zoning laws that accommodate for big box stores while mostly leaving out locations for small businesses. Planners in new developments tend to design for cookie-cutter houses with little to no green space, neighborhoods that seem to stretch on forever, everything that you will see in the so-called city of Killeen. Killeen is possibly one of the worst cases of suburban sprawl in the entire country. Among the rows of uniform residential developments in many of its neighborhoods, you will find no character nor sense of place whatsoever. The commercial developments located on the periphery of these subdivisions, which is not optimal for commute times, deem it necessary to use more land for parking than the actual store.
This is downtown compared to a big box. Downtown on the left, 10 acres, a little over 12,000 an acre. You compare that to a big box site that's almost double the footprint and a third of the revenue per acre. And Monty can maybe hit in his a little bit about how this incremental development, we can get a lot of more value out of our development by going small.
This city planner explains how while parking lots are necessary for car-centric places, he recognizes that they are a waste of valuable land and do not produce any tax revenue. While Killeen has a small downtown main street lined with mostly traditionally built shop fronts, the big box stores and strip malls still manage to attract more business. The effect this has on the downtown is leading to increasing vacancies. The housing developments seem to be growing rapidly, and they are very spread out. Killeen was asking themselves, how can we grow as big and as fast and as far as we can? And these places now need services like fire departments, water lines, electrical infrastructure, among other things. And after a set amount of years, that infrastructure needs to be repaired and replaced.
I would travel the country, and no matter where I went, big city, small city, rural, urban, suburban, no city that I went to had enough money to pay for their infrastructure. Everywhere was struggling to get enough money to pay to fix their streets. And I started to ask why? Why don't our cities in the most prosperous country in the world, why don't we have enough money to fix our streets?
If the city was zoned more efficiently and denser, then they wouldn't need to upkeep the amount of services among a low population.
This is a really, really complicated chart, but what I want to point out to you, this shows how Killeen has grown over time. That square, that was Killeen in 1950. That big colored blob around it is how you've grown in the last 70 years since. So from 1960 to 2020, your service area, how much has it grown? 10 times? So the size, the footprint of your city has grown 10 times. The population in your city has grown 6 times. So what you're doing, when you expand out like that, what are you adding? More streets, more water and sewer and parks, more police, fire, everything that has to be provided to that area, but your population hasn't kept up with it. What does that mean? That means each household and each person is on the hook for a greater share of that service cost.
These problems don't affect just Killeen. They are present all throughout the suburbs of other major cities. Killeen, unlike many other suburbia-type places, is at least putting effort into revitalizing their downtown and combating urban sprawl. They recognize the mistake that they have made with these cookie-cutter, spread-out developments and are now looking to build neighborhoods, not subdivisions, which are places that are not reliant on the car. They have come up with a comprehensive plan that will create a better future for Killeen.
If we're going to build resilient, lasting, equitable communities, we've got to get back to prioritizing people over cars.
Wallace Meshier is one of the people working on this plan. She is the director of planning for Killeen, and she recognizes the design flaws of the city.
So one of the focuses of the comprehensive plan is to figure out how to grow sustainably and to make sure that the growth is paying for itself. And one of the ways to do that is to look at the width of the streets. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is increasing density and narrowing the width of our streets so that there's less for the city to maintain long term.
She elaborates on the comprehensive plan and how it will help Killeen grow into a better city. She talks about how the roads are too wide, which is something that a lot of suburbs have a problem with, and how they're planning to implement bike lanes to narrow the roads. Killeen is taking a step in the right direction, and other suburbs should do the same. The work itself isn't that hard. It's about realizing that sprawl isn't sustainable. Hopefully, suburbs and towns across the United States can realize that. After World War II, everyone's dream in America was to have a nice yard and a nice big house in a neighborhood separated from the unpleasantries of the big city. This has birthed a Ponzi scheme where cities could build developments really quickly with cheap materials and roads upon roads that burden the city with more expenses than its meager tax base can keep up. Imagine an American community where no one is required to own a car. This would give people the opportunity to live closer to everyday needs like work, shopping, and schools, which would only be a quick walk or bike ride away. What is being described is very commonplace in Europe, where people can live in their communities and not drive around them.